welcome to another episode of Three Wise DMs, the podcast where three dungeon masters who've been doing this for way too long talk about all the things we do to try to make our games as good as they can be.
Hi, I'm Tony.
I'm Chris.
Glory days, they'll pass you by, glory days. In the wing of a young girl's eye, glory days, glory days. Yes, that's it, man. I haven't been able to fit enough Bruce into the podcast, so that's the new one. That's Glory Days, obviously. It's me, DM Dave, Rock and Roll DM. Hello. Welcome back, everybody. We got a really fun episode today. And Glory Days is totally right? Because we went back to what we think is our Glory Days, which is back to basic D&D, 1E, that kind of thing. But as Bruce prophetically, talks about in the song, that's not really your Glory Days, man. Don't get stuck in those times, because we're moving on. We haven't even hit our peak yet. But we're going to talk tonight about what we learned, what we liked and didn't like about our experience, our final experience now playing the OSR, like we've talked about many, many, many times. So, guys, what do you think? Just as a setup here, we did it for, as you guys know, Scott, who was on the Terrains episode, the Wizard Washburn, our terrain wrangler. It was his birthday coming up. He is an OD&D player from White Box, as you guys know. So I decided to run a game in the Basic Fantasy Roleplaying game for anyone who's wondering which one we used, which is just a clone of Basic D&D, the Moldvay box, flipped to a D20 system. And yeah, we ran an old school module, dungeon delve, meat grinder almost. And, so anyway, what do you guys think? What was your first takes on this?
Well, I'll steal the joke. It really had that Call of Cthulhu feel to it because nothing is low risk. Traveling, between points, extremely dangerous. Checking a door, extremely dangerous. Checking a chest, extremely dangerous. Looking around corners.
I definitely think the danger element is a lot different. I mean, you're rolling around. Poor Matt was rolling around with 2 hit points there, right? So it's it's a different level of concern. It takes the concern and it puts it in front of the story a little bit. A lot of times you're just really, really concerned. But I will say, after having played it back early teenager in the basement, right? 1E, it was really cool to come back to it again after all we've kind of been through now and kind of take a dip in it. It really distills out a lot of the cool things it's still there. It's super dangerous and I have some things I don't like about it, but I think that it is a really cool counterpoint and it's really cool to see how far it's come.
Yeah, Tony, I think you hit that right on the nose with Call of Cthulhu meets D&D. Because like Chris, you just said, we haven't played, for me and you at least, I know, Tony, you were playing second for the majority of the time, which is similar, but a little bit less wildly dangerous, and I think. But, we haven't been back to that type of system since we were kids. I mean, Chris was a teenager. I was preteen, Yeah. And now we're coming at it from, Pathfinder 5e kind of mentality. So very different. So, yeah, the closest thing that we've played to it in this time is our Call of Cthulhu campaign that we were running for some time. And we kept talking about how wildly dangerous, and it changed the entire mentality of the player. And it was interesting because now you're in D&D, but it still changes the mentality of the player, right?
Stairs.
No, not the stairs.
Stairs will kill you. Just fall down the basement stairs and it's all over. That's your enemy for the evening. Yeah.
Fall damage would have ended you, man. Like you fall off a pillar, you're dead,
Or an ottoman. So we should probably talk about why that is. So first off, character creation. Everything about this is pretty hardcore, whether it was intended to or not, because it had that real gritty, realistic feel versus the wondrous and fantastic feel that you're used to in 5e. So there's no max starting hit points. We rolled out a bunch of characters. I had a character with 2 hit points. I had a character with 1 hit point. And it's like, well, if I happen to take 1 wound, oh, and by the way, you're dead. There is no you fall unconscious until someone gives you a medicine check. Someone gives you a shovel. That's what your reward is at that point. And then the character, when you roll out your 3d6, and we try to do it by traditional flavor, where we rolled them out as they landed to help craft your character. So you could wind up like, I'm going to be a fighter. Well, my fighter's got a 13 strength, and he's got a 16 intelligence, and a 5 wisdom, and an 11 constitution, and a 14 charisma.
Maybe not a fighter. But yeah, so a little background so people know, since I was running it, and because I've been wanting to, I've talked about it many times on the podcast, I've been wanting to run this basic fantasy role play game for a while, and now it happened. So I'm glad, and I plan on cracking it out again for different things. But what I did, I had them roll up 2 characters, and I changed it a little. I did 4d6 drop the lowest, because I still think 3d6 is wildly crippling. It's just too rough. The first one, I let them put the stats where they want, so they could have the fighter or the thief or the cleric, whoever they wanted to have. And as Tony said, the next one, it was 46, drop the lowest, and it was in order. So you're going to see what you have. You know, maybe your dex is high and you're going to be a thief, and you were thinking maybe cleric or something. But also, did you guys find it interesting that, like, they changed the order? Like, back in the day, I don't know when it happened, but they changed the order of the stats, right? It went like strength, intelligence instead of strength, dex.
I got burned. I thought I was like, I got a 16 for my second score. I'm thinking, oh, this is my thief right here. And then I bust open the sheet, and it's like intelligence. And I'm like, he's a really smart thief. Like, this is like, that is a weird sort of arbitrary change of that. Maybe just grouping the physical stats and the mental stats differently, but that was a weird catch there. And it's weird that they had intelligence second, but I guess it was more important then, maybe.
It definitely was more important back in the day. We've talked about that a couple times, especially as you went into AD&D, because intelligence allowed not only additional languages, but additional proficiencies and things of that nature. So you could be smart enough to be better, you know, as opposed to now where it's just like, I know some stuff, but I'm still like pretty much useless unless you get a religion check or something, right?
So something I liked about it was character creation. You know, on the flip side of this was bing, you're done. Roll up your stats, choose your class, choose your character's race, roll out your gold. You've got a character.
Yeah. And
I think that's pretty attractive to especially someone who's not super familiar with any of the additions and how they work. Or you don't want to spend, you know, especially if you're not really proficient with it, you're not going to spend an hour making a character or searching out ideas. It's like, this is what you got. It works in a really big group setting. So that we all could have got together and all cranked out characters and be like, we're done. Let's play.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think it was one of the things I like to pace of play. And I think a lot of it is around that, is that there's limited choices and limited resources, very limited resources. Like, you're like, right, you're like, I have 30 gold pieces and I'm a fighter. Like, well, I guess I'm going to have a sword or I'm going to have armor or something like that. And I hope I have enough for rations and maybe a rope. Right, and a backpack kind of thing. So it's, as opposed to right now where you get your basic equipment and then you get a little bit of extra money and you're buying other things. Like it was much more stripped down, right? In action, in an action thing, you can move and attack. There's not all this. There's not bonus actions and reactions and all these other things. It's very stripped down, which lets it move character creation and the pace of play and combat and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely, I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and that's one of the things that interested me about it, and why I said, we would create them when we just sat down, we just roll out some characters, because it goes so fast to the point where you could be literally in a session, and your dude dies, and okay, start rolling a guy. You guys got 2 rooms. I'll have them in the second room for you, kind of thing, So, like, in a way, because I know that was a thing. Or you would just retreat back to town and hire another retainer or something of that magnitude.
So we were in some games where the combat really dragged out. Like, we had 7 people at the table. Dave had multiple creature types available, and we were just like, attack, miss, okay, move, attack, miss, go, and we actually really had traction. So like the battle really flowed nicely, and that was attractive. Something that was a little kind of made my eyebrow go up was almost everybody was a fighter. Why? Because when you're a thief, you can climb walls effectively, and pretty much nothing else.
That was one of my dislikes. That was my first dislike here.
Climb a wall, maybe.
Yes.
Take it away, Chris.
I was going to say, Kilbo Stabbins, my halfling thief, right? His particular set of skills, he can move silently 30% of the time. And I'm like, dude, like, your grandmother can move silently 30% of the time. Like, she would sneak up on you probably 50% of the time. Like, it's some of the stuff, like, legitimately, climb walls was 80%, and everything else was at a level where I'm like, I mean, I guess I have the opportunity as a thief to make these rolls, but the rolls were a point where you're like, these set of skills, I guess maybe by the time I'm 4th or 5th level, I'm actually not completely bumbling into every time I'm trying to steal something or sneak into a room.
Bro, like, the thief plays like the thief from Basic and like 1E plays totally like the thief character from Conan the Destroyer, dude. Like, that wasn't like comic relief. That was literally just a basic D&D fucking thief, dude. That was him. That was him. You know, and you can attack from behind, you know. So.
But you have to be behind, right? And that was one of the things. It's a kind of a cool. I was like, ooh, sneak attack. Like, this is very 5e style. But it is the very true backstab. Like, you have to be behind it. And a lot of times it's difficult to get behind there versus a traditional sneak attack where you just need to have advantage or have someone adjacent, you know, to the person there. So it was interesting.
So I was actually looking at a cleric, and I'm like, all right, guys, this is Scott's birthday. I'll play the support character finally. I've been saying I'm going to do this for 8, different campaigns. I'll finally do it. And I looked at this cleric, and I'm like, this is atrocious. I don't get one spell at first level. Not one. But I could turn undead if we happen to run into them, maybe.
Which that would have been helpful in this adventure because you ran into several. But yeah, it's interesting that the cleric, and I remember this from even AD&D, that first level clerics still were not able to cast spells yet. Like, they were still having to prove themselves. And I don't know if that was a balance mechanic for against the wizard or something like that. But yeah, that was very much a thing. They were able to be a warrior, you know, they were able to wear armor and things like that. So you could still be kind of a halfway fighter, but also still have some interesting flavor to it. So character creation wise, like we said, like, it's definitely, I found it, one, the nostalgia of seeing, like, even the Basic Fantasy Roleplay sheets they made up look exactly like the old Moldvay ones. So just the nostalgia was there. You know, you see the save for death ray and paralysis or petrification or wands and staves, and you're like, oh man, this is it, you know. It doesn't make as much sense as make me a dex save or a wisdom save. I find the stat to be a better way to save on. But how about now, going towards the actual adventure and the gameplay itself? That's where I really was finding some things that I really liked that were really shining, not the least of which is running one of the old school stat blocks that were literally, I just pulled a module from Basic Fantasy Roleplay, the website. They have tons and tons of resources, all free, which is one of the things I really like about them. I haven't played any Dungeon Crawl Classics or Old School Essentials, but Basic Fantasy, he has made the point, this is all free. Don't buy this stuff. You know, this is just, I want to just make this happen. So I grabbed one of the old ones out of an adventure anthology or something, The Cult of the Green Skull, you know, your classic dungeon delve. But the stat block is your classic old stat block, which literally had, you know, move, attack, how much, what's the damage, his morale, hit points, the end. You know, and I even liked it because in the module itself, they broke it down into each one had different hit points, and it was just a little checkoff box, you know, 4, boom, 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 he's dead. You know, this guy's got 7, this guy's got 3. But it was it was all, I could have fit all of them probably on 2 index cards, the entire module, all the stats.
It's beautiful.
Which I really liked in terms of ease of play. We talked about that with, kind of streamlining some stat blocks when you're running your own adventures, even in 5e. But this is, I mean, you want to talk about streamline, man. This is it.
And it was the essentials, right? The things, I think as we've added stuff, it gets better and cooler, but it's something to see it in its barest form there when it's just the basics. And the idea of different hit points. Right now, it seems like it would be kind of like a hassle a little bit. Like I'd be like, oh, I have to track different things for everybody. But there is something to it. And the way that it was back then is that they would have just rolled up the monsters differently. Like everything was around the randomness of the dice. Like it was, how much gold you have, everything was related to the dice rolls.
Yeah, that was the running joke the whole time where I kept rolling out 1d6 for the silver on the goblins, and it was always a 1 every single time. They all had 1 silver piece on them the whole time.
I'm never going to get plate mail. I can't move on without discussing. I have to revisit an old joke about being a old school wizard and how it's like being geriatric. So you take this poor character class. You're thinking Gandalf. You're going to be a mage. You're going to wield cosmic level power. You've got 1 spell. You've got a bullet. You got 1 bullet in this gun. You better actually connect with it because that's basically all you could do until you take a long, uninterrupted nap.
You're literally Dr. Loomis from Halloween, some geriatric old psychiatrist with 1 bullet and a gun, right?
Yeah, your armor class is horrendous. Your hit points are laughable, and it's the only thing more laughable than that is your weapon selection. Good luck.
Yeah, no, I mean, Bonnie's character was more effective with the cudgel, right, than the magic. But just because magic missile, you could only use it just the once, right, per long rest.
1 and done.
So, 1 and done. That's pick wisely.
But those saving throws you brought up, oh, good God. Someone started casting a spell. I'm like, please don't cast it on me. I'm a human fighter. I have, maybe a 3 in 20 chance of saving. Well, I'm dead.
Not only that, but talking about that with the saves, and especially running, so the Cult of the Green Skull, it was a classic dungeon delve where a cult has taken up thing, and it's an evil cleric. I mean, your introductory adventures, I think, in all basic D&D were always an evil cleric, whether it was the moat house at the village of Hamlet, right, whatever. There's always some evil cleric trying to raise something, right? But it was not a solo encounter, but Tony, you've always been a big fan of trying to have that big bad evil guy, the solo encounter for the big finish. And in this system, or a system like it, any of the OSR stuff, I feel like that's actually possible because it was, for instance, when Jevram, the evil cleric who headed up the Cult of the Green Skull, cast Hold Person. Right, so Hold Person in this system was much more of this kind of open-ended thing where it was you either one person you're trying to save against a spell at a -2, and your saves at level 1 for spells, let's say it's a fighter, it's probably like a 16, 17 maybe. 17, so good luck. Now you're running it rolling 19 or better, or you're held for, I think, D6 rounds or 2D6 rounds, whatever it might have been. Or I could cast it on a group and hit 1D4 people. So I cast it on 4 different adventurers. Thankfully, only 1 failed, or the 3/4 of the party would have just been, no, you're just out. It's save and stuck. There's no resave at the end of the next round. You don't hit them and they come out of it. No, he's just held now. That's deadly level, right? And that's scary level too, I think.
Yeah, no, that kind of ancient threat there. I had a party nearly TPK'd because of a Hold Person spell. It's a low-level cleric spell, and time to make some saves. No, except imagine what you did in that game, except 3/4 of us blew our saves.
Yeah.
And then we just got cut down. You're just standing there like an idiot. You don't get a saving throw for 8 rounds, which might as well be eternity. Let's start rolling up your next character.
Yeah, which brings about Chris's big dislike from OSR.
Bring it up.
And in general, in gaming.
Let's hear it.
Dying, right? The character's dying, especially in the OSR sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I mean, in many ways, it is a game, and a game is about winning or losing. And I mean, when a character dies, it's a bit more than a loss, right? It always seems like that. I mean, just even in the game there, when Scott's character died, like, I felt kind of bad about it. Now, obviously, I'm more of a 5e guy, right? So I have a stronger connection. But I just don't. I mean, I guess if that's what you're coming in expecting, that's cool. But I think that there's a better way to do it. Like right after we played, I started texting Tony about what if we started doing something like, and I I mentioned it to you, like something like a serious injury instead of death, where you're still maintaining the challenge and the consequence, where you're still pushing them to have to go back to town and spend money to get it fixed. Or it's going to cause you to lose movement or have disadvantage. You've lost an eye. Make it significant. I lost a hand, right? I lost an eye. You have to relearn it. You can't use two-handed weapons now. Or you have disadvantage on perception or something like that. Give it a cost. Enhance that whole cool element of that, which I thought was you don't just go and blow the dungeon away at once, right? Like our traditional idea is like, oh, we're going out to Phandelver. We're going to hit the thing and we're going to go through the whole cave in one shot, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't a 1E thing. Like you'd go in, you'd hit like that first thing, and then it's like, oh God, flee back to town, right? And everybody goes, run away, right? And they got to heal up, right? And you got to hire some more retainers. What if you just enhanced it and just made it instead of, I mean, if you legitimately want your characters to die, that's cool. I mean, it's your thing. But for me, what if it could be another way and you're just injured until you can find some way? Like it would be like just grabbing another retainer in many ways. What do you guys think?
Well, the problem there is, are we trying, like, if we're doing like a one shot like Dave did, it was fun. The last time I played this, we did a one shot. We all got a bunch of characters. A bunch of our characters got splattered against the walls. We all laughed. It was fun. But if we're actually going to try a serious campaign, no. You got to give, I mean, I like the simplicity of the system. I like that we're not doing bonus actions. There's no legendary actions. All those things are attractive in their own way. However, you know, I've been wounded once and you're dead. I'm like, wait, I was at full hit points. Sorry, I rolled a 6. You're dead. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Absolutely. And that's what I think is great when you return to the OSR stuff, because immediately coming from any later editions, even AD&D or 2E or whatever you're coming from, the minute you go back, you go, oh, this is why they started to have Death's Door. This is why they started to have negative hit points. It was people immediately in parallel evolution finding patches for things that just weren't working. That's why you will never find any table that stops dwarves at level 9, right? Or elves at level 9, right? It's just not going to happen. Because immediately every table went, no, fuck that. You know, Legolas can go beyond level 9, right? And I will say, Chris, it's a good point, because I even added, they have optional rules in there, so you don't have to have it be such crushing defeat. You can do the thing where I had, where if you get knocked out, go down to 0, you can make a save against, I think it was like death or death ray.
Yeah, we did the death ray.
And if you make that save, you now have 2d10 rounds to, like, Tony, Jen's character, I think, went down, right?
Correct.
And it was 2d10 rounds. She had it's like 9 rounds or so, or 19 rounds to die, right? Something like that. Chris, you texted that out last night. And no, I absolutely love that, because Tony, you're absolutely right too. If we were doing something where this is the team and we're going to go forward, I don't see how you're not going to have any connection to the character. The story gets interrupted because it becomes more you're just sending pawns out, and whoever lasts the longest is the hero. And there is fun in that kind of play, but for a long narrative story-based kind of campaign where you really get into the characters and the story that you're developing with the table, that's not going to be, yeah. So I agree. I love the idea of like lingering injuries and stuff. I've long thought about even adding that into, even the 5e games, just to add that level of, okay, I need you to role play this now. Like I remember in Woodstock, the Woodstock game, Scott's Bard, Adelard the Bard. We had fought, Tony, do you remember when we fought all those corpse flowers that Thorin had thrown out at us in the cave entrance?
That was a really heartwarming encounter. Yes.
Oh my God. You want to talk about a deadly encounter, man. Throw a couple corpse flowers out because like they'll kill you and then they lift you up and slam you down onto their like spiked petals or some shit. And then you raise up as a zombie in like 4 rounds or something like that, right? Whatever. But Scott on his own decided that Adelard, because of the level of injury he had taken, his arm was like destroyed and shredded up to the point where he was playing it unbeknownst to most of the rest of the table. He was playing like he only had one arm, so he wasn't using a shield anymore, things like that, until he could have Beam, my cleric, regenerate the limb when I got to a certain level and I could use regenerate. So I love that idea, and I think it creates that level of danger that you're looking for without completely derailing the party dynamic that you're trying to nurture and foster.
And I think it comes from that in 1E, it was one step removed from war games where I went from a battalion of people and now I'm this guy, but I'm just this guy. And then all of a sudden now it's 1E, now it starts to be 2A. This guy's got a story. And all of a sudden now this guy has more about him, and now I'm more interested in him because I've taken the focus and I focused it down to the one person. And now the soldier has to have more of a story, a backstory, and a background, and they have to add different things. So yeah, no, I enjoy it. Like I always have a hard time killing players. Like it's one of my big faults as a DM. But something like this, I feel like it takes the gloves off a little bit. It's like you'll lose a limb, you got to go back to town and spend, 1,000 gold pieces to the wizard to have him regenerate your limb there or something like that. And it creates that dynamic of campaign time in between that you lose a lot, right? If you're just quick healing, right? You could move with that lingering injury in the slow healing model because you travel back to town for 2 weeks and then go back to the dungeon versus the way we do it now where everything feels much quicker in 5e. You don't get that kind of long-term things that you do in Cthulhu where you have to go to a hospital, right? Like you have to role play hospital time. Yeah. That's when
where's my Jello?
Serious. It's like, I'm in the hospital. Like, what'd you do tonight in the game? Oh, we hung out in the hospital. I had to heal up some serious injuries.
Nurse. I'm gonna have a talk with her superior. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, I was very dissatisfied with the service there. The food.
They call these mashed potatoes.
Oh my
so
God.
to add to that, honestly, I got to throw in XP. Now, I do understand.
Oh my God, dude!
Yeah. I made a joke about this in an article, and then people came back and they're like, "No, you get gold with your XP too." And let me tell you, we had a solid adventure, and between 7 guys, we walked out of there with I think a 10th of a level. So you combine that with you're easily killed, and my answer is nobody adventures. That's why the world will be populated by farmers, because there's no way I'm risking my life 10 times like we did on Sunday to that level of intensity, and that was life and death. Like every corner, every aspect of it to then get the second level. I mean, if you're really looking for that gritty feel, like that realism why it takes years to advance, it's there, but you got to really be in for it. And something on my dislike list that I do not miss, energy drain.
Yeah, we didn't run into it, but we did talk about it a little bit because, it's there where the energy drain with things like vampires and some like wights or wraiths, like undead type creatures.
It's actually oddly common.
Yeah, they'll take a level from you. And it's funny because
or 2.
What was great was when Scott was telling some of his old war stories, in essence, from his white box days at Penn State, right? And he's talking about how he got to it took them he was like, oh yeah, like we would have to do 5-6 sessions, like all-nighters to get to like second level, and if I missed a game, man, everybody had, gone beyond. I had to catch up, blah, blah, blah. Like, wow. And then he said how, Chris, remember when he was talking about his one paladin, he had rolled some crap hit dice. So he didn't have a lot of hit points, but then he fought a vampire and had energy drain. So when he re-leveled, he actually got better hit points. So it worked out for him in the end. But yeah,
it worked out for him over. I can't even imagine how long with the time that it would take to that just to get to level 2 and then die or something like that. But oh, God forbid, like I get to level 2 and then you drain me back to level 1 in the next encounter. Like,
oh, bro, like level 2, like
what happened in the past 3 months?
Yeah, now I have 5 hit points instead of 2 hit points, right?
Oh, good Lord.
But Chris, back to your point earlier, just to round it out, because I had a thought, because I'm kind of there with you, because the three of us actually, I think, are all very, very interested in the story portion of the game and where the characters are going and how they develop and who that is. You know, like we're developing this as a table as we're running the table. But it's like, you know, Game of Thrones, right, was so. It changed the game. And why? Because they killed people off. The heroes don't die, right? Like your star guy, Sean Bean playing Ned Stark, gets axed at the end of season 1. And everyone went, what? Like, are you kidding? This was the whole show. And that was awesome. The only reason that worked, though, was they spent a whole season building up why Ned Stark matters, what he's doing, who he is. You care about
axe him the first episode, like they open it, it's like, and that was like, oh, that was Ned Stark.
Right, when the dragons attack like the Lannister like gold convoy, did anybody give a shit about the 40,000 soldiers that died? No, fuck them, right? But Ned
that's statistic.
I will die on this hill. Ned Stark, fuck you. I will tear down a kingdom for this man. But those 40,000 dudes, fuck them. Like, and it's only because they spent that time. Yeah, and that is definitely something that changes when you have the time for a character to last, you know.
That's actually a kind of an effective trope where you throw out a character, a NPC of some form, you get the party to like them, and, you know, this is important, this is why they're there, and then I guess that character's dead now. I guess we won't be all sitting around a table talking about this. And there's your motivation. This is your driving force.
And that's literally been the entirety of the Dragonlance campaign up to this point. And as I said, I lean heavily into that. You know, when you guys were doing the escape from Vogler after the invasion, you're at the wharf. I had decided all of the different villagers that you saved in the board game portion before were now there, but they were people that you had met them for a session, right? But they had a name. You would talk to them. You would do whatever it might have been, and it made much more sense than Villager A got blasted out by the boiler drac, you know. So yeah, it's very effective in that way.
No, Rasquito wrote a song about the bartender lady. That was a powerful. That was a masterclass in NPC things. Is to your point, they had to be there long enough for you to give a crap about them, right? Like if you just flash them all into fire as soon as we walk into town, you don't care. But it was like, oh, it added a little something to the session where everybody kind of stopped for a second and was like, oh, that's kind of sad, right? Like it's a different thing that you usually feel at the table, right? You know. So it was I thought that was very cool.
And going back to the article that's probably up on the site right now, where I talk about how I kind of leaned even heavier into the best adventure hook in 5.8, which is the Ispin Green Shield thing, where you're attending his funeral and he's someone from your past. But I did it where, you know, one, you guys were already putting him in your backstory in some way. You each had some individual thing, but that was in your imagination, right? When we ran through the scenario and you're fighting with Ispin, in essence, now we have what I was saying, like in the article, game memory. Like now it matters because what happens in game, what I remember from the game, the session itself, that sticks with you, right? Much more than your imagination of the other narratives that are happening, right?
I thought a couple of the combats, especially at first in there, definitely had a bit of a 1E flavor as far as danger. Like they definitely found that dragon cannon thing or whatever, like thing. That thing was absolutely, that was deadly.
Yeah, ludicrous, right?
That's ludicrous being knocked out by a horse, but don't get me started.
But Chris, you were talking a little bit after the game too, and you were saying like you loved how in the game, the OSR game we just did, where we literally, I had waves of monsters coming. Like you guys opened the one room, right? You walk down the hall, open the door, and there's like 8 goblins and a hobgoblin just hanging out there like, okay, initiative, everybody, you know? And there's just waves running down the hallways at you. And it did not it didn't turn into Mount Gakis where we like, okay, guys, we're going to schedule this big battle for Saturday night, and that will be what we do.
I tell you what, though, I was thinking about that at the waves, and it was like, well, what if you took it in 5e and I have 3 goblins with 9 hit points each, and instead of that, it was 9 goblins with 3 hit points each, right? Now, obviously, you're multiplying combatants, so that changes the difficulty, but there was something about the waves of low hit point monsters, kind of like when we fought the crawling claw things in the Stanworth campaign. Yeah. There's something about, and you're just, I mean, every time you're hitting them, you're killing them, but they just keep on coming. It's not like it has a different level of danger to it because it's a little bit more fluid. It's not just 1 or 2 things. It's like 6 or 7 or 8 things coming down the hall at you.
And you haven't been in these conversations, and I think I know exactly where Tony's going to go with it. This is the constant debate that you will always find surrounding the 4E mechanic of minions. The whole point of the minion, and Tony can go even more in detail, is exactly attempting to recreate that feel of you're in the mines of Moria, right? And the waves of orcs are just rolling down on you. Tony?
Well, I felt the creatures having a base 1 hit point was poorly received by certain audiences. I mean, it'd be like, hey, this is a level 20 monster with 1 hit point. That can be a little tough to sell. I will say in the game, when the doors opened up after we had finished the boss and all these other creatures were coming at us, I'm like, well, gentlemen, it was an honor to serve with you because David Killing is all right here.
Play as the ship's going down here.
No.
And
I had to do something. Well, here's behind the screen. Ready? Here's the take behind the screen. You guys had turned through the dungeon and rolled up on like the final boss pretty quickly, which I was like, all right, cool. I was like, but like we could just be done now, or the alarm has been raised because shit's been going down and now guys are coming from the other side. And that's in essence what happened. It was kind of all right, well, it's still kind of early, so I think they can handle this.
They're all wounded. They're out of spells. They're low on ammo. Here comes 8 goblins. Behind them are 4 wizards.
Yeah, no, a wizard and 3 acolytes. But I will say, when I unleashed 4 magic missiles into the room and dropped most of the party, that definitely changed the dynamic.
Yeah, the magic missiles were super crazy. But I think there's something to it, and it was one of the favorite combat things where you brought in, like, everybody's beating up, and you finally get the thing, and nope, it's not over yet. There's more people here. There's other people in the thing that just heard you beat the crap out of the guy, and they're coming for you and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and it forces you have to, right, if you want to spend, especially in 1E where you have limited resources, you want to spend that magic missile fast, you're toasting. I mean, those guys, they hit us all with the magic missiles, and in the end, they were trucking down the hallway because once we cut through all the goblins, they had no defense. Like, they had spent their one spell there, and so they just become cannon fodder.
As I made the joke, like, Tony's dropping arrows down the hallway, like from Buddy the Elf throwing the snowball with the kid running away, right? So that's what I was kind of thinking about with this is we talk about limited resources in 1E, but the beauty of 1E, where you have that very simple character creation, right? You can make them in 3 minutes. They got a sword, they got a chainmail, and my name's Freddy the Fighter. You guys gathered so much magical gear as you went into the dungeon, right? Like Matt's character had a great axe +1. You had found a ring of protection. You found potions. You found all this stuff. So then, like, the tables are turning because now you're starting to unload, and we're not attuning to these things because there's no attunement rule.
No, give me all the goodies.
Hold on an hour.
Sword, man, it's a magic sword. Like, just go kill Vlad the Impaler right now, right? It doesn't matter. So, like, that's kind of was a cool mechanic too, where it changes it because now I'm delving in there, but there's stuff in there that can help me, and can make me better.
The treasure and gold were extra there because of the danger and what they needed to give you. Gold was XP, and the magic weapons kept you alive just a little bit longer down there with 2 hit points.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could have a special, award to Matt for playing a character for an entire session with 2 hit points. Bravo.
He never dropped.
He went down to 1 several times. Every time you rolled, you would get the 1s. It was there was a magic there. Like and Scott's character died twice. Bonnie's character ended up dying, but Matt with 2 hit points. Yeah, he dropped the 1 twice. I was sitting right next to him. I gave him a potion of healing for 1 hit point. And I'm like, you have 2 hit points, so it's worth it, right? I'm doubling your hit point value right now.
Yeah, you get 100% increase. Oh my God. So, okay, I think it's probably about that time for final thoughts on the OSR, our first foray into the OSR, what we liked and what we didn't. So, for final thoughts, what do you guys think that we haven't covered yet that really stuck out to you, or that you would maybe use or encourage other people to use?
Something odd, I missed the D6 initiative. I kind of dug that because, I roll below average on a D6, I got a 2. I roll bad on a D20, I've got a 5. I'll be going next week. So that was kind of nice. I liked the fluidity of the game. I liked how everything came together. It wasn't, especially we had some less experienced players at the table. It was all very accessible. The combats were smooth, the encounters were smooth, and it gave us a chance to focus on the things like the story, the environment, and the characters. So, a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I think to his point, I think there's less choice. I like the low resource kind of idea where you can't having 1 spell is an extreme example of that, but I like the idea that I just can't come in there and I'm like, bah, 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 bah. Like I have to think about it, and there's legitimate danger, like the next room is going to be that. And I think, there's ways to bring that into 5e, that extra bit of danger, using a lot of the things from 1e. Like I'm planning the serious injury thing. I'm working on that for the next campaign, and a couple things with the waves of low hit point monsters. I think it was a lot of fun. Like I said earlier, coming back now, years and years later, and getting to play it and see it, how it really stacks up against 5e there.
Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed it. I only ran it. I didn't get to play it. I'm hoping at some point we might crack it out every now and then, and somebody might run a game in it. Because that was one of the beautiful things, was that we got together, we ordered some lunch, made 2 characters, because I knew they were going to need some. Because as I said, the birthday boy, both his characters died. So
happy birthday.
What are you going to do? And he loved it. But we made characters, and then we ran an entire dungeon. Now, you guys didn't go to the other side of the dungeon. That's fine. But you still could have, because you explored. You were, checking walls, finding secret things, we had so many encounters. 6, 7, 8 encounters maybe, all told.
About that.
And big battles. 10 goblins running down the hall at you, 5 goblins around the campfire. These were massive things, and we ran through all of them while exploring the dungeon and checking for traps and all of this, even though you guys unfortunately didn't set off any of the traps. That would have been fun.
Thank God we didn't. I was waiting the whole time for someone just to be down the pit trap or something.
Yeah, and it was. As a very quick aside in my final thoughts, because it's worthwhile, there was literally a door that the door was trapped, right? And it was like poison darts that I think might just kill you or do so much damage that you're dead. And then when you open the door, you walk into a room and it's just a pit that you fall in and die. There's nothing else there. And I'm like, who builds that in a dungeon?
It's a door to the outside of the building where you just walk out and fall down 30 feet.
I see.
I was like, it doesn't even lead. It's not protecting anything. It's not like, anyway. But that's kind of what I loved about it, is it is so fast paced. You can make characters with brand new people pretty quickly and run an entire adventure all within 4 or 5 hours, which, as we found in 5e, is not. That's a little bit harder to do. You really gotta tighten it up if you're running in something like 5e. But I would highly recommend getting into some of the OSR stuff for any of you guys. If you've been thinking about trying it out, grab one of them. They're all going to be probably pretty similar. They're all based off of kind of basic D&D, and they just switched them over to a D20 system entirely and ascending armor class. Because I'm not going to get into the THACO debate. It's just, I'm sorry, it's not intuitive. I don't care. It's just not. But yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks again for stopping in. This was great. I'm hoping we crack open the OSR again at some point. I was saying I might crack it open for Ravenloft for Halloween. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But that's going to be it for this week. If you guys remember too, if you are rolling any dice, go check out fanrolldice.com/ref/2871. That is the 10% off from 3WD, from us to you. Right now they're giving away like mini dice and stuff with all the orders. I don't know, all kinds of stuff. Go check them out. But as we do each week, we're going to let our dear old erstwhile leader take us out.
Thank you all for listening from home. This has been another episode of Three Wise DMs. We've been growing really fast because of all your support. Thank you very much for that. If you want to support the show more, please hit that 5-star rating button. Give us a good review. Tell your friends. All that really does help us get out there and get the message out there and signal boost. And just try to reach as many DMs as we can. We would love to hear the problems you're having DMing. We deal with a lot of listener questions right on the show. So if you have anything you'd like to hear us talk about, please send it in to threewisedms@gmail.com. Go to our website, threewisedms.com, and put it in the What's Your Problem field, or come talk to us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're active in all those social media networks. That's it for this week. We'll talk to you next time. Three Wise DMs.